There is a moment, small, fast, almost invisible, when someone sends the message, makes the accusation, interrupts your sentence, or delivers the insult. Before you answer, something rises inside you and says, respond now, correct them now, defend yourself now, make them regret speaking to you that way. But stop and ask the harder question: who chose the timing of your response? Was it principle? Was it wisdom? Or was it pressure, wounded pride, fear, anger? Because every immediate reaction reveals what is governing you in that moment. You may believe you are exercising power because your words are sharp, your voice is forceful, and your answer is quick. Yet, if another person can determine when you speak, how you speak, and what emotional condition you speak from, that person is temporarily governing you. That is not authority. That is surrender wearing the appearance of strength. A mature leader governs the interval between pressure and response. That interval may last 3 breaths, 10 minutes, or an entire night. Its length is not the point. Its assignment is the point. The pause exists so you can recover choice. It gives emotion time to report without being allowed to rule. It gives judgment time to separate what happened from what you assumed. It gives responsibility time to ask, what response will still be honorable when this feeling has passed? This is not decorative silence. It is not pretending you were unaffected. It is not refusing necessary conflict. The pause is active. You are examining motive, weighing consequence, protecting what matters, and preparing to engage without becoming possessed by the provocation. We are going to examine 7 moments when mature leaders refuse to react immediately, moments involving anger, incomplete information, public challenge, another person's pain, urgent demands, confidential knowledge, and necessary correction. In each one, the pause protects something larger than comfort: authority, relationships, discernment, trust, or future options. But we must also face the objection. Silence can be wise, but it can also become fear. Delay can prepare responsibility, or it can disguise neglect. A person may call avoidance peace simply because courage would require a difficult conversation. So, we will establish a test. Does your silence improve the response, or does it postpone responsibility? You do not need to become quieter merely for the sake of quietness. You need to become less governable by pressure. The destination is not a personality that never speaks. It is a presence that cannot be hurried into proving itself. Quiet authority begins when your answer belongs to you again. But silence has no automatic virtue. A closed mouth can be governed by wisdom, or it can be governed by fear. It can protect a relationship or quietly punish a person. It can prepare truth or conceal neglect. So never admire silence merely because it is silence. Ask what rules it, what work it is doing, and where it is leading. Mature silence is chosen for an assignment. Perhaps you need to understand what actually happened. Perhaps you need to regulate the emotion that would distort your words. Perhaps you are protecting confidence, preserving dignity, or preparing a response that can withstand tomorrow's judgment. Whatever the purpose, responsible restraint includes a return. You may say, I need time to consider this, but I will speak with you tomorrow. Now the pause has a boundary. Responsibility has not vanished. It has been scheduled. Avoidance is different. Avoidance delays because it hopes the matter will disappear. It refuses the conversation, ignores the obligation, and leaves other people carrying uncertainty. Fear says, if I remain quiet long enough, perhaps I will never have to face this. Restraint says, I will face this when I can do so wisely. One is hiding from duty. The other is preparing to fulfill it. And do not confuse restraint with manipulation. Silence becomes corrupt when it is used to punish, confuse, control, or force another person to chase for necessary clarity. Withholding an answer to create anxiety is not self-government. Refusing communication so another person feels powerless is not maturity. Purposeful silence governs you. Manipulative silence attempts to govern them. So carry 3 questions into every pause. What am I protecting? What must I understand? When must I return to speak or act? Those questions expose motive and establish an endpoint. If you cannot name what the pause protects, it may be protecting only your comfort. If you are making no effort to understand, you may simply be delaying. If you cannot say when responsibility resumes, your silence has become a hiding place. There are also moments when delay itself is wrong. When safety is threatened, truth must be clarified. Accountability is required. Consent is uncertain, or a clear duty demands intervention. Timely action outranks your preference for quiet. Wisdom does not watch harm unfold and call itself composed. Wise silence postpones reaction so responsibility can improve the response. Unhealthy silence postpones responsibility itself. Keep that test before you as we enter the first situation where the need for government becomes most visible. The moment anger reaches for your voice. First, when anger demands your voice, do not confuse urgency with authority. You feel the pressure to answer before the moment escapes. The reply becomes sharper. The message becomes longer. You begin arranging sentences to expose, embarrass, or defeat. Suddenly, resolving the matter is no longer enough. You want to win immediately. Anger has not merely identified a problem. It is attempting to choose the words, the timing, the audience, and the consequence. But an emotion can be legitimate without being qualified to lead. Anger may tell you that a boundary was crossed, respect was violated, trust was damaged, or something valuable is in danger. Listen to that information. Do not shame yourself for receiving it. But remember, a witness may testify without presiding over the decision. Anger can report what hurts. It cannot be allowed to compose the verdict. Here is the practical discipline. Stop speaking. Name the feeling privately and honestly. I am angry. Then identify the value beneath it. I believe my authority was undermined, or I am concerned that this conduct damaged trust. Finally, choose a definite time to revisit the issue. Not someday, not when everyone forgets. Give the matter an appointment. Imagine a leader receiving a disrespectful workplace message. The first draft of the reply is punishing. It corrects the employee, advertises the leader's displeasure, and makes certain everyone understands who has power. The leader could send it within seconds. Instead, the leader saves the draft and asks, what must this response accomplish? That question changes everything. If the objective is accountability, humiliation will not serve it. If the objective is restored trust, public retaliation may deepen the fracture. If the objective is a clear boundary, then the response must be firm enough to name the conduct and disciplined enough to avoid creating a second offense. The leader returns at a set time, addresses the message directly, clarifies the standard, and determines the necessary next step. The issue stayed on the agenda. Anger did not stay in charge. That is regulation, not suppression. Suppression pretends there is no fire. Regulation refuses to let the heat decide what will be burned. You are not denying anger when you refuse its commands. You are placing it under government. This is mature authority. You can experience intensity without distributing that intensity to everyone around you. You can feel deeply, speak clearly, and still choose consequence over release. Once emotional temperature no longer dictates your answer, another danger appears: speaking calmly, but too soon, because your conclusion arrived before the whole story. Second, governing emotion is not enough. You must also govern interpretation. A person can speak without anger and still commit an injustice, because calmness does not turn an assumption into truth. A deadline passes. A team member is absent and has offered no explanation. You hear one fragment of a conversation, and it seems to confirm what you already suspected. The mind moves quickly. I observe the failure, therefore I know the motive. They are careless. They do not respect the work. They are hiding something. Then you speak as though the part you supplied is as factual as the part you witnessed. This is how partial information becomes total certainty. Discernment begins when you stop treating your first interpretation as the final truth. Create investigative space. Separate the event from the meaning you attach to it. The report was not submitted by the agreed time is an observation. You ignored the deadline because you do not care is an assigned motive. One may be established, the other must be tested. Use a simple pattern. State what you know. Ask a neutral question. Listen for context. Delay judgment until the necessary information is available. You might say, the report was due yesterday and I have not received it. What prevented it from being completed? Notice what that question does. It does not erase the standard. It does not excuse the delay. It opens the door through which relevant truth can enter. The answer may reveal an overlooked instruction, an emergency, a failure to communicate, or simple negligence. Context may revise your conclusion, or it may confirm that correction is necessary. Either way, your decision is now anchored in more than imagination. A leader weakens authority by repeatedly repairing accusations that patients could have examined first. People become guarded, trust contracts. They learn that being seen is not the same as being understood. But when you investigate before you pronounce, people can trust your firmness because they have experienced your fairness. Now, do not turn this principle into endless hesitation. You will rarely possess every fact, and waiting for perfect knowledge can become another form of avoidance. Ask instead what minimum information is necessary for a responsible decision. Identify the missing fact, seek it directly, set a reasonable boundary for receiving it, and decide when that threshold is met. Patience is not indecision. It is disciplined accuracy. The mature leader can revise an interpretation without surrendering authority, and confirm a concern without pretending certainty arrived earlier than it did. That is sober judgment. Questions before conclusions, context before verdict, decision after sufficient information. Yet this discipline becomes harder when the challenge is public, the room is watching, and pride demands an immediate defense. Third, when someone challenges you before an audience, remember that spectators create a pressure of their own. You are in a meeting, at a family gathering, or standing in a public exchange when someone interrupts you, belittles your judgment, or describes your actions unfairly. The words matter, but so do the eyes around you. You feel reputation entering the room. Now, the impulse is not merely to answer the person. It is to convince everyone watching that you cannot be diminished. That is where the objective can change without your permission. You stop addressing the issue and begin performing for the audience. You speak longer than necessary. You become harsher than wisdom requires. You reveal what should have remained private. Why? Because performance demands immediate proof of strength. Authority asks a different question. What outcome must this response protect? You do not have to fight on the stage, another person's provocation built for you. Choose your response according to what the moment requires. If the statement is unclear, ask without heat, what exactly are you saying? A calm request for clarification often forces careless insinuation to become a specific claim. If the conduct is openly disrespectful or disruptive, state a brief boundary. You may disagree with me, but you may not continue interrupting. We can address the substance after this discussion. If the matter is personal, complicated, or unsuitable for public debate, request another setting. This deserves a direct conversation. Let us speak privately after the meeting. Clarification, boundary, private follow-up. None of these requires you to accept humiliation. Restraint does not mean sitting quietly while disruption continues. You may stop the interruption, correct a dangerous falsehood briefly, or end an exchange that has become abusive. But firmness does not require a retaliatory speech. A concise boundary can protect dignity more effectively than an emotional defense because it shows that pressure has not seized control of your judgment. And notice what your pause preserves. If you refuse the public duel, you still possess options. You can examine the facts, document what occurred, seek correction, pursue reconciliation, or take formal action if the conduct requires it. The challenge may deserve a serious answer. It simply does not deserve to choose the timing, the language, or the arena of that answer. Tell the person when and where the matter will continue. Then keep that commitment. This is not retreat. It is responsible command of setting. Your dignity is not created by winning the room in a single moment. It is governed within you before it is recognized around you. And sometimes leadership requires an entirely different kind of strength, not holding your ground before spectators, but becoming quiet enough to receive another person's pain. Fourth, when another person brings you disappointment, do not assume leadership requires an immediate answer. A colleague, spouse, friend, or team member begins describing what hurt, what failed, or what felt dismissive. Before the person finishes, your mind is already working. You identify the problem, design the solution, and prepare the lesson. Or you search your own history for a similar experience. or you hear criticism of your impact and rush to explain your intention. These interruptions often disguise themselves as leadership. Fixing too quickly says, your pain is a problem I must control. Comparing says, your story matters only after I connect it to mine. Defending says, my innocence must be established before your experience can be understood. Each response may contain something useful, but usefulness offered too soon can become another form of dismissal. Sometimes the most useful thing you can give a person is not your answer, but your undivided capacity to receive the question. Attentive silence is not empty. It is compassionate strength. You are carrying another person's words without seizing them, correcting them, or rushing to decide what they are permitted to mean. You are allowing the real need enough room to emerge. Use 4 movements. First, remain present. Put away the distraction, release the answer forming in your mind, and let the person finish. Second, reflect the central concern. It sounds as though the decision itself was difficult, but being excluded from the conversation damaged your trust. Third, ask what kind of help is wanted. Do you need me to listen, help you think through options, or respond to what happened? Fourth, speak only after the need becomes clear. Presence, reflection, permission, response. Now understand the boundary. Listening is not agreement. Receiving someone's experience does not require endorsing every conclusion, accepting every accusation, or promising every requested action. A mature leader can understand before evaluating. You can say, I understand why that affected you, and still examine the facts, clarify your perspective, or decide that a boundary must remain. Imagine a repair conversation beginning with, you never support me. The listener feels the accusation and prepares a defense. But instead of contesting the word never, the listener asks, what happened that left you feeling unsupported? The pause reveals that the deeper issue was not disagreement with a decision. It was learning about that decision after everyone else and feeling unworthy of direct communication. Now the response can address the real wound. When people are heard, counsel becomes more accurate, correction becomes more humane, and trust has room to recover. The pause protects relationship by refusing to solve the wrong problem. And that recovered patience will matter again when the pressure changes, when someone does not ask you to listen, but demands that you promise before you have had time to think. Fifth, when urgency pressures you to promise, do not let the emotion of the present spend resources that belong to your future. The request may involve money, time, partnership, employment terms, or a major favor. Then comes the pressure. I need your answer now. Perhaps no one intends harm, yet the compressed moment activates powerful levers within you. You fear disappointing someone. You want to appear capable. You are excited by the opportunity. You worry that delay will make it disappear. Or you simply find the silence between the request and your answer uncomfortable. So you say yes to escape the pressure. But a promise made in seconds may govern weeks of your life. The moment is brief, the obligation is not. A hurried commitment can consume time already assigned, money already needed, energy already limited, and trust already attached to other responsibilities. What feels generous now may feel burdensome later. Then resentment enters a promise that sincerity should have protected. A delayed answer is not weakness when the delay has an assignment and an end. It is stewardship. You are taking responsibility for the future version of yourself who must perform what the present version is being asked to promise. Use 3 movements. Acknowledge the request. Name what must be reviewed. Give a definite time for your answer. You might say, I understand why you need clarity. Before I commit, I need to review my existing obligations and the full cost. I will give you an answer by 3 tomorrow afternoon. That response is neither vague nor evasive. It respects the person without surrendering judgment. It protects credibility because you have promised only what you can already control, the time of your decision. Imagine agreeing to lead an additional project because the first conversation makes it sound manageable. Only afterward do you examine the calendar and discover that its busiest period overlaps with duties you have already accepted. The cost is no longer merely a few meetings. It is divided attention, weakened preparation, strained relationships, and 2 commitments receiving less than you intended to give either one. The pause exposes what excitement concealed. But the review period must end. When the appointed time arrives, give a clear yes, a clear no, a counter proposal, or a request for information genuinely required to decide. Do not keep extending silence because refusal feels uncomfortable. Decisiveness is not measured by how rapidly you answer. It is measured by whether your answer can be trusted. A governed pause protects future options, but it also protects the person asking. A pressured yes may become a resentful burden. A considered promise has a better chance of becoming faithful action. And if commitments can spend your future capacity, careless words can spend something even harder to recover, another person's trust. Sixth, when private information makes you interesting, do not purchase belonging with trust that was never yours to spend. The conversation shifts, voices lower. Someone leans closer and says, "You did not hear this from me." Suddenly, another person's struggle, mistake, conflict, or vulnerability becomes the price of admission. The disclosure creates excitement. It makes the group feel intimate. And because you know something too, you feel the invitation to contribute. Why is that invitation powerful? You may want to prove that you are an insider. You may rush to fill an awkward silence. You may use disclosure to retaliate without confronting the person directly. Or you may strengthen connection through shared judgment. We belong together because we disapprove of the same person. But a connection built by violating someone outside the conversation is already teaching everyone inside it not to trust one another. Possessing information does not give you permission to distribute it. Ask 2 questions before you speak. Am I authorized to share this? Am I responsible to share this? If the answer to both is no, then knowledge must remain under discipline. What entered your awareness does not automatically belong in your mouth. You have 3 governed options. First, remain silent and redirect. I do not think we should discuss that without them. How should we address the issue directly? Second, decline explicitly. That was shared with me privately, so I cannot add to this conversation. Third, if the matter requires action, move it into an accountable channel with the person responsible for supervision, safeguarding, investigation, or appropriate support. Silence protects confidence. Refusal protects dignity. Proper escalation protects responsibility. Now understand the boundary. Confidentiality is not permission to conceal imminent danger, abuse, reportable misconduct, or another matter that clearly requires intervention. Discretion does not mean burying what duty requires you to raise. The mature question is not simply, can I keep this secret? It is, who has a legitimate need to know, and what is the proper way to tell them? Imagine a team member revealing a colleague's private difficulty during an informal conversation. For a few minutes, that person controls the room. Everyone listens. Later, however, the group remembers something deeper. This person turns entrusted knowledge into entertainment. The temporary reward was attention. The enduring cost was credibility. Now imagine the one who refuses. The room may become quiet. The moment may feel uncomfortable. Yet over time, people learn that their weakness will not become that person's social advantage. That is durable authority. You become a safekeeper of trust. And this prepares us for the final situation where silence cannot remain. The truth must be spoken, but your motive and timing must first become worthy of it. Seventh, there are moments when continued silence is no longer restraint. Repeated disrespect must be confronted. Poor performance must be corrected. Broken trust, violated boundaries, and consequential errors must be addressed. In these moments, leadership cannot remain quiet merely because speaking will be uncomfortable. The truth has become part of your responsibility. But the truth of your message and the condition of its messenger are not the same thing. Your concern may be valid while your motive is still dangerous. You may be right about what happened and still want revenge. You may possess the facts and still exaggerate them to strengthen your case. You may call it correction while secretly seeking humiliation, submission, or the pleasure of making another person feel small. A true message can be damaged by an undisciplined delivery. So return to the 3 questions. What am I protecting? What must I understand? When must I return to speak or act? Perhaps you are protecting a standard, a relationship, a team, or someone's safety. Perhaps you still need to distinguish a pattern from an isolated event, verify the consequence, or understand the other person's responsibility. Then establish the return. Do not say, I will address it eventually. Decide when the conversation will occur and prepare for it. Write the essential issue in one sentence. If you cannot state it clearly, emotion may still be expanding it. Remove accusations you cannot support, especially claims about motives you cannot know. Identify the repair, accountability, or boundary you are seeking. Choose a setting that fits the seriousness of the matter and protects appropriate dignity. Then schedule the conversation. Clarity, evidence, objective, setting, time. The pause ends when you can speak to the issue without making emotional discharge, the hidden assignment. That does not mean you must feel nothing. It means your feelings are no longer designing the punishment. You can name what occurred, explain why it matters, listen to what remains relevant, state what must change, and follow through on the consequence or repair required. This is courage under government. It neither attacks for relief nor retreats for comfort. And the boundary is decisive. If delay increases danger, compounds harm, violates a duty, or deprives someone of clarity they need, then preparation must not become an excuse. Speak, intervene, document, or escalate promptly through the appropriate channel. Responsibility sets the pace. Maturity does not bury necessary truth. It prepares truth to arrive without unnecessary destruction. And now that all 7 situations are before us, we can see that each pause follows the same deeper pattern. It begins by recovering choice, receives a specific assignment, and ends in responsible speech or action. Look across the 7 situations and notice what each pause protects. In anger, it protects your authority from being captured by emotion. With incomplete facts, it protects discernment from premature judgment. Under public provocation, it protects dignity from performance. In another person's pain, it protects relationship by making room to listen. Before commitment, it protects future options. Around confidential information, it protects trust. Before necessary confrontation, it protects truth from a reckless delivery. Different pressures, different values. One discipline, the sequence is simple. Notice the impulse. Interrupt the automatic words. Identify what is at stake. Choose the response and timing that serve it. Then return and act. Notice, interrupt, identify, choose, return. This is the architecture of a governed pause. Its success is not measured in seconds, minutes, or hours. A longer silence is not automatically wiser. The question is whether the interval improved what came after it. Did your response become clearer? Did it become fairer? Did it protect what mattered without abandoning what responsibility required? If nothing responsible follows, silence has failed its assignment. Now, make this practical. Do not attempt to master all 7 situations at once. For 1 week, choose the trigger that visits you most often. Perhaps it is the urge to answer when irritated, to assume before asking, to promise under pressure, or to interrupt another person's account. Choose one recurring field of practice. For 7 days, keep a brief record. Write down what triggered you. Record the first words you wanted to say. Name the purpose of the pause. Then note the response you eventually chose and the outcome you observed. Trigger, first impulse, purpose, chosen response, outcome. You are not collecting evidence to condemn yourself. You are learning to recognize the moment when government is usually lost. At first, you may notice only after you have reacted. Keep observing. Soon you will recognize it while speaking. Then, with practice, you will recognize it before the first word leaves you. That small advance is mastery taking form. When the first pause becomes easier to detect and practice, add a second situation. Do not hurry the layering. Repetition turns awareness into capacity, and capacity into character. The goal is not to become silent. The goal is to become governable from within. And when that discipline settles into identity, your presence begins to communicate something before you ever answer. Pressure may reach you, but it cannot command you. The old identity was easy to hurry. Anger demanded words. Uncertainty demanded conclusions. Spectators demanded performance. Discomfort demanded interruption. Urgency demanded a promise. Gossip demanded participation. Wounded pride demanded correction before wisdom had prepared it. The new identity preserves choice. Quiet authority is not mute, and it is not timid. It listens completely without surrendering judgment. It asks before assuming. It sets boundaries without performing cruelty. It protects what was entrusted, makes decisions when review is complete, and delivers necessary truth when responsibility requires it. Its calm is active. Its restraint has direction. Its speech arrives on purpose. So return to the question beneath everything we have examined. Who governs the interval between pressure and response? If anger chooses your language, the pressure governs it. If an audience chooses your posture, the room governs it. If urgency chooses your commitment, the request governs it. But when you retain the freedom to decide whether to speak, when to speak, where to speak, and how to speak, authority has returned to its rightful place. This freedom protects more than composure. It preserves authority without aggression, discernment without haste, dignity without display, relationship without dismissal, future capacity without careless promises, trust without exploitation, and truth without needless harm. These are not 7 disconnected techniques. They are the visible qualities of one governed life. Begin where you are. Choose the recurring moment most likely to extract an automatic response from you this week. When it appears, create the interval. Observe what rises within you. Decide what must be protected. Then answer responsibly. Practice that one moment until you can recognize it sooner. Afterward, add another. Growth does not require instant perfection. It requires repeated ownership of the next response. The next provocation is not merely another test. It is your first opportunity to practice the leader you are becoming. When speech is governed, silence is not emptiness. It is authority preparing its answer. And the leader who is no longer available to every provocation discovers that when words finally come, they carry greater weight.